Artificial intelligence is one of the trickiest topics in game development. In this video, we break down the theory of how it works and how you can make your game better through it. Get ready to learn because class is in session. Hello everyone, I'm Steel.
And I'm Teal.
And we're with Studio Blue.
Thank you for joining us for our Creator Classroom. Tonight's topic is AI in video games.
All right, so we're going to add some intelligence to our user experience. Hello, Cargo Room. Hello, Graceless. Hello, Kiyoya. The Earl himself is here. Hello, RPG Emma, and everyone else who may or may not be lurking. If you're watching us live, please give us a follow and consider subscribing. And if you're watching us VOD on YouTube, please smack that like button, click subscribe, ring that notification bell with tender loving care, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about this one, because this is a heavy one.
Yes, it is.
This was voted on by our supporters.
There we go.
And is one of our finals of the year. Hello, Corrigan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So this is going to be a lot of talking. There's not a workshop or anything here.
It's almost impossible to have a workshop for a topic like this.
It really is. Plus, I do want to preface by saying, although we are going to go over a primer of how you would create an AI system for your game, we're not actually going to teach you step by step how to do it. That is a programming course.
Yes, it is.
Well beyond the scope of this. So what is the purpose of this? Well, we have 5 points we're going to be hitting tonight. The first one is we are actually going to examine what an AI means in video games, because AI, which stands for artificial intelligence, means something completely different outside of video games.
Right.
Then we're going to review the evolution of the game AI, give you guys a brief history lesson. It's pretty fascinating, plus it'll also give you an idea of where we're coming from. And that'll lead us into the meat of it, which is the discussion of how artificial intelligence in games work on a theoretical level.
Right.
And then we're going to go over sort of the models of how they work, and then we're going to explore examples of game AI. And then finally, we're going to provide a primer for you guys. This primer will help you figure out how you best can create a good functioning AI system for your video game project. Whether it be through, and I mean, it can be anything from programming in a programming language, using visual scripting like blueprints. Heck, you could technically create an AI model using eventing and conditional loops in RPG Maker.
Yes, yes.
So,
Which we've done.
I will be providing the main presentation, but Tia will be providing commentary and her own thoughts on the matter.
Yes, because I have thoughts.
If at any point, like with all creator classrooms, you want to throw out a question or a comment yourself, please do so. Teal is monitoring on the player monitor.
Yes, I am.
I'm monitoring on the director monitor. And Earl says that's what he's doing for his game. Conditional
branches and conditional branches.
Because when it gets down to it, all it is logic.
Yes, it is. It's all logic.
But let's go and dive.
Okay. Let's examine.
The first part, this is what AI is not. It's not HAL 9000.
No, it's not HAL. No.
Game AI is not actual human intelligence. It's also not something that rewrites itself. Rewrite. It's not an application that rewrites itself during gameplay. There is actual AI out there. Google and other companies are developing it.
Yes, they are.
That change the way they function as they grow and as you feed them data. That is called it's called real AI. Game AI is not that, okay? And it's also not easy to perfect. You could easily spend as much time getting really high functional AI that makes your game as immersive and tailored to the user as possible as you do programming action sequences, animations, writing dialogue. There are people who go to school and have jobs specifically writing game AI.
Because that is how intense and complex it is.
Yes. And that's cool, Cargo Room. We love having you. It's always great to see you, man. So, what exactly is game AI? What is this mysterious thing? Well, it's actually, and we're going to use Wikipedia's definition, it's logic used to generate responsive, adaptive, or intelligent behaviors, primarily in non-player characters, similar to human intelligence. What that means in English, as we have the happy slime with his focus,
yes,
is that it's basically algorithms. I went and jumped a little.
That's okay.
Quickly.
It's algorithms.
It's algorithms.
Yes.
That's what it is. AI in video games are algorithms upon algorithms upon algorithms of logic that examine what's happening in the game, what the current state of the game is, where the player is in the gameplay loop, and make adjustments to how the things that the player does not control acts.
Yes.
That is the bleak. We just blow the mystery wide open.
Wide open.
That is what game artificial intelligence.
Yes.
It's logical algorithms that tell the game change this behavior of something the player doesn't control in order to improve their experience, whether it be through challenges, immersion, or otherwise. So let's move into the history. The history of AI in game, and I apologize for a wall of text here, but this is to kind of give you guys an idea.
Because it has been a number of decades in development.
Yes.
This is a technology that was only dreamed about in the 50s, and it took this long to truly develop it.
Because if you've ever seen the old sci-fi movie War Games,
War Games,
that is where people thought AI was going to go. The HAL 9000.
Yes, they did. There was a lot of fear.
And game AI was built off of the functionality of what that could be if it was applied to a video game.
Yeah.
War Games truly is the best example of what people thought game AI could be.
Right. And it was.
And it was a great movie, by the way.
It was a good movie. Hey, Reverie.
Good to see you, Reverie. So, some form of AI, so artificial intelligence in some form has been used since the inception of games. Because there always had to be some logic, some algorithm that told the game what to do when the player, to control something the player wasn't providing input.
Right.
If you make a game and you're moving a dot around the screen and that's all that's happening, there's no AI there because there's nothing to interact with. It's just you moving a dot.
Yeah.
But if you have another dot that tries to touch your dot, and each time it touches your dot, you lose points, then that's artificial intelligence.
That's AI right there.
That's AI right there. In the early 50s, there were simple games like NIM, which is a match.
Yes.
That match game.
Yep.
Checkers, chess, very rote behaviors. Now, please understand that modern day checkers and chess games use highly sophisticated algorithms.
Yeah, they do.
Because they've had decades to perfect it. There was even a big contest, I think in the 70s or maybe the 80s, where this chess master beat IBM's Deep Blue.
Yes, yes, that was big stuff back then. Yeah.
But it's logical that logic games like NIM, checkers, and chess would be where AI would start. Very rote behavior. Then we get to the 70s and the early 70s, and we have text-based games like Hunt the Wumpus. Which, if you know Hunt the Wumpus, we can be best friends. And the Star Trek text game. But those were not AIs in the sense of adaptive behavior so much as the algorithms would choose stored patterns.
Yeah.
So the Wumpus might move left, left, right. Or right, right, left. Or right, right, left, right. And it would have those stored ways the Wumpus could move in the maze. And then depending on what the player does, that pattern would get pulled up by the program.
Right.
Same thing with Star Trek. Then we start getting more complex in the late 70s when you have arcade games like Space Invaders, Galaxian, Pac-Man.
Yeah, you don't think Pac-Man has AI?
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Because one of the things that Pac-Man did was it applied individual quirks, personalities to each of the four ghosts.
Yes, they did.
Each of the four ghosts acts a little differently, and each one has a different level of aggression after Pac-Man. Some will try to go around a corner and catch him. Others will chase him.
Yeah.
And in order to maybe even push them into another ghost. These games started having more complex algorithms to try to challenge the player. Then we get to the early 1990s, and we get to, thank you Square Enix, Dragon Quest IV and The Secret of Mana started allowing for player-adjusted tactics. This would be the player would say, I want my character to act like this when I'm not controlling them. So like Secret of Mana, the girl or the sprite, they act like this. Or Dragon Quest IV, those tactical aspects. When I'm not controlling something, it either, it fights, heals, think of like how your most rote behavior of an RPG character.
Yeah.
Go all out, fight conservatively, conserve MP.
Right. I remember that.
Heal when damaged, that kind of thing. Heal when
damaged.
That kind of thing. Eventually that goes to what we even have like the Gambit system in Final Fantasy.
Yes.
12 decades later. But those two games kind of started paving the way for that. And then in the mid 90s and beyond, we have what are called finite state machines, FSMs. And FSMs are where we are today. They're just increasingly more complex.
Yeah. They build upon themselves. So there's a it seems really complex now, but it is building upon previous architecture.
Right.
So we just keep developing along that path.
And there are exceedingly complex AIs out there that are, when you break them down, built on these fundamental block structures.
So Archeia has an interesting tidbit of info.
What's that?
For Space Invaders, the enemy speeding up was actually a glitch, and they decided to keep it in.
That is true. The way it worked was, as less and less enemies were on the screen, there was less processing power required to move the aliens, the invaders. And because there was less processing power, they could move faster. Clock tick. Clock tick being the CPU. And they were like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This works. So it became a feature.
Yes, it did.
And yes, the Gambit system, the AI, yes, basically the Gambit system is you do the AI work for the computer.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
And Corrigan says, of course, that AI has gone wrong from time to time. Yep.
Yeah, it has. And with some hilarious results.
When game AI goes bad, it...
Yeah.
Dragons flying backwards. It just doesn't work. Let us move on. So this is game AI theory in a nutshell. We have the wizard slime's going to show us the magic.
Yes, he is.
It is really all, like I said earlier, it is literally all about the algorithms, specifically heuristics. Now, if you know that word heuristic, you probably know that from your antivirus. Heuristical analysis is different than this. A heuristic is an algorithm that accomplishes a logical goal in as short and easy a way as possible. It is literally, I have A, I have to accomplish B. What is the most efficient way to do so? That's a heuristic.
Yeah.
So when you have these AI algorithms, and whether they be 10, 20, 20,000, they look at and analyze what is the easiest way to accomplish whatever the goal it is they're trying to accomplish, whether it be a challenge goal, an immersion goal, whatever. And they follow those heuristics to accomplish the goal as efficiently as possible for two reasons. One, it allows it to adapt quicker to the player. Two, it literally is easier on the process.
Yes, it is. And you really, really, really want to go nice with your CPU.
Because regardless of how powerful computers are, they still have a top speed. We haven't hidden the quantum engine yet.
Not yet. So let's tell them about the basic flow.
Okay, so the basic flow is an algorithm in AI, a game AI. What it does is it analyzes the player's current status.
Hey, Hawk. And yes, they've gone to plaid.
They've gone to plaid. Hey, Hawk, welcome to the stream. Good to see you, buddy. I'm sorry you're not feeling great, man. I caught your message on your server. I hope you feel better, but really do. We're talking about game AI. So the basic flow of game artificial intelligence is this. The first thing the AI does which remember, the AI is just nothing but a set of algorithms. It analyzes what the player is currently doing.
Yes.
What is it doing? Is the player moving? Is the player attacking? You know, what is the player currently engaged in? What is the player's health? That kind of stuff. Just pick a thing related to the player. It analyzes that. Then afterwards, it considers its own status, whether it be a monster, an environment, the game itself. You know,
the game itself.
Right. What exactly, or whatever the algorithm is currently focusing on.
Right.
You know, it considers its own status, such as its health, its physical position, its disposition, its focus, all these variables. For a monster, it might be its hit points, you know, whether it's buff, who it's aggroing on. For a sound, because sound can be run by an AI.
Yes.
Left 4 Dead did that. What area is the player going to be the most affected by? So if the player's standing here, the little area off to the side is going to sound the spookiest. Things like that. It's considering its own status. Once it's analyzed the player and considers itself, it runs through the heuristics for the best possible option. And again, these could be thousands of these algorithms.
Yes.
Here we go.
Woo! Woo! Thank you, Hawk.
Why we have Skynet.
Yes. Chats like this are why we have Skynet. Thank you so much for the dono. $5. We love you, Hawk. So it runs through, as I jump right back in, the heuristics and gets the best possible option for that moment. Efficiency, that's the key.
Yeah.
Then it executes the option that has the highest probability of success.
Yeah.
Modified by any mitigating factors. Now, when I say success, I don't mean killing the player.
No.
Because the goal of that AI might be to induce an atmosphere. The goal of the AI might be to reveal a piece of information visual.
Yes.
Like show a castle off in the distance. The goal of the AI might be to have the soldiers converge on the player. Whatever the goal is, it runs that option based on what has the highest probability of success.
Yeah.
Taking into account mitigating factors like, for example, other players on the field. Is the player currently in motion?
That's true.
Is the player in a menu where the game doesn't pause? That kind of thing. Just little things like that. And then it wash, rinse, repeat, ad nauseum. Excuse me. These algorithms run constantly. A well-written AI works as hard as the game engine, and it's constant. So now let's talk about that finite state machine, because that's all AIs have come from here.
Yes,
all modern AIs. And it really is a flowchart. Like in its most simple form, it's a flowchart. It is the most simple version of modern game AI. So all AI that comes afterwards is built upon the concept of the FSM. And some of these are insanely complex. But when you get down to it, this little flowchart, which we got from Harvard University, wrote a great article. I'll probably link it in the VOD if I can remember. It's a good article.
It's a very good article.
So it reacts to player input with pre-programmed behavior. Like, for example, the AI is looking, it's wandering around. It finds the player. There's the player. It attacks the player. It starts to lose health. It evades the player. It goes and finds health. It heals itself, and then it enters that loop again.
Yes.
You know, like on the screen right there with need more health points. You know, sufficient health points. Go back into wander mode. So that little graphic right there is the most basic version of this. And it is literally a flowchart. It is effectively an algorithm algorithm is not a flowchart. A algorithm in relation to game AI is effectively a bunch of thousands of if-then statements.
Right. And a good example of that is in Skyrim, the mud crab.
Yeah.
Look at mud crab behavior. That is FSM in just in its most basic form. The behavior of a mud crab.
It moves around.
It moves around.
It sometimes buries itself in the mud.
Yes.
It cleans. And if a player gets too close, it might aggro.
Yeah.
It might attack. And if the player puts distance, the mud crab buries itself again. So Teal's absolutely right. The mud crabs in Skyrim are amazing examples of a simple finite state machine.
Yeah.
So let us continue. So we're going to go through 5 different examples of types of game AIs, because there's tons of them.
There are.
But these are going to be the easiest ones to go through. Now we see the mud crab AI in its natural environment. Okay, so adaptive pathfinding is one of the types of AIs that you can have. Games like Ghost Recon, The Division, The Last of Us use this. And adaptive pathfinding is defined as the non-player character moving through the level, finding the most optimal way through your level. Whether it be as simple as one of the little Koopa Troopas in Super Mario Brothers moving around, or as complex as an enemy from The Division trying to hunt your ass down.
Yeah.
Pathfinding is the non-player character finding a way through the level, whether it be trying to reach something else or you. So how does that work? Well, first it analyzes the objective and attempts to predict the destination. So maybe the destination here is the player character.
Yeah.
So the enemy AI sees, okay, I am currently at this X marker, and currently the player, from the information that I have, is over at the Y marker. And I have to get there. Also, at this moment, I'm analyzing the fact that the player is moving in this direction over here. So it takes that analysis into account. And once it's analyzed where it's trying to go and any potential variables that result in a change, it chooses that optimal path, trying to keep itself safe, whether it be an enemy trying to keep itself from you shooting it, or Ellie from The Last of Us trying to keep herself from getting killed by the bad guys.
Right.
So it's adaptive pathfinding. And then it attempts to attack, if it's an attacker, it attempts to attack some sort of vulnerable position. Like in The Last of Us, when those sons of bitches, the humans, would come sneak up from behind and start beating Joel with a baseball bat. The Division is a great example of that too. You know, you're shooting at the enemy and you're keeping it behind the wall and you're thinking, oh, this guy's an idiot, he's gonna stick his head out, and then his buddy comes up behind and ganks you with a knife.
Yeah. That's
adaptive pathfinding. So the AI changes how it moves through the level in order to get whatever its goal is. Then there is adaptive style, how the AI plays the level. This is in games like Left 4 Dead, Echo, Fear. Most people, I'm going to go off on a quick tangent, especially since I have a very special relationship with this game, the sequel actually. Fear and Fear 2 use some of the best adaptive AIs for their time.
Agreed.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
And but games like this that take how you're playing and analyze how the player plays, and then changes its own style to reflect that. Games like Echo, where the game literally is watching how you're playing a level so that the echoes you create can continue to get you through the levels. It is Kiyoya. I'm going to use Metal Gear Solid 5 for a different example, but yes, the enemies in Metal Gear Solid 5 change their style, their play style, based off of what you're doing. So in this case, they analyze the action of the player. Is the player, waiting every 5 seconds before moving on? Is the player stalling like in Left 4 Dead? Left 4 Dead does not let you stall.
No.
If you sit there in Left 4 Dead, that director AI will send a horde after your ass to get you moving. And it will suck. And Echo and Fear acted similarly to adjust themselves. So it builds an internal database of the playstyle. So while it's watching you play, while the AI is watching you play the game, the adaptive style AI is taking down notes of how you're playing.
That's right.
A little internal, not just this tiny little thing. Okay, so player's doing this, player's doing this, player's doing this. And it starts to build predictability. You have a 35% chance of going left whenever you encounter a red door, but you have a 65% chance of opening the door.
Yeah.
That is, it's starting to predict your play style. And then it predicts the choice that you're going to make based on that database. So it has a list of what you're going to do. or what it thinks you're going to do, and then it throws out something to predict. You know, it throws out something in prediction.
Yeah.
Left 4 Dead is a perfect freaking example of that, where if you're creeping along and you're moving at a certain type of speed and you're taking out the enemies because you're seeing those, the big bloated guys and the guys with the tongues, it might throw a hunter at you because you're not expecting the hunter. You're always looking down and not up where the hunters are going to jump. Things like that. That's the adaptive style. Then we have adaptive tactics. Now we're getting into what Archeia is talking about. So this is similar, except now instead of just play style that's changing, it's changing how it approaches you, the player, as a challenge.
Right.
And that's games like Alien Isolation, which is one of the best AIs I have ever seen. Metal Gear Solid 5, I hate that game, but I respect it. And Splinter Cell Blacklist. So what it's doing is it's constantly monitoring what the player is doing. Like in Alien Isolation, the AI is constantly, I think there's like the macro AI, and then the xenomorph AI. It's constantly monitoring what the player does, where the player is, how the player is moving, what items the player has used, and then it changes its behavior. It changes the heuristic model based on that behavior. The enemies in all the bases of Metal Gear Solid 5 do this all the time.
They do.
To the point where if you're constantly doing headshots, they start wearing helmets.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
which sucks.
then it sucks. Why I hate Metal Gear Solid 5, because I suck at it. And then it constantly can change which algorithm to use. So it will change the algorithm drastically if it sees that using that algorithm will shake you up. Again, it's just running if-then statements. It's looking at predictability. It's looking at probability.
Yeah.
So let's say that it's been running algorithm A. I'm going to get very simple here. And the adaptive tactical AI sees that it's been running algorithm A and the player is whooping its butt.
Yeah.
So it's going to wait until the player is in that vulnerable part of algorithm A, and then it's going to throw algorithm B at it.
Yep.
That's adaptive tactics. Now adaptive story. This one's a little more esoteric. Okay, this is games like AI Dungeon, Facade, the Icebound Concordance. I didn't even know the Icebound Concordance existed until I made this this classroom. But apparently these are all stories that use AI to build the story. So this was fascinating. This one was out. This one right here, I had to step outside of my comfort zone and read and learn about. So I'm excited this exists. What an adaptive story does is it analyzes your choices as you're going through a story. Like, think of like a choose your own adventure, or like a Zork game or something, you know, or in the case of Facade, what you say to the two couples in the apartment. You know, I say this, and you know, I keep saying these kind of things to the man, but these kind of things to the woman, and it's analyzing and pulling in that data. Then it will run these little story snippets through the algorithm to find the closest match. So if you're constantly telling, let's just come up with it, you're telling the bartender, put it on my tab, put it on my tab. Then suddenly, then the next time you go there, presenting the stories of Overnatural Consequence, the bartender says, hey, your tab is run up too high.
Yeah.
But I have something you can do to close your tab out and, you know, wipe it clean. And the story itself shifts based off of the input you've been given. Now, some of that could be really simple, like just keeping, like with the bartender, keeping track of how much money and when that variable goes over a certain amount. But you can get super complex because let's say that each time you tell the bartender you're going to put it on the tab, you give a different excuse. Like, you need money for medicine. Your daggers need to be sharpened.
Right.
Your dog ate your coin purse. And then the next time you ask for the tab to, you know, be looked over, the bartender comes up with a unique excuse that sounds similar and says, oh, what happened this time? And you're like, wait a minute, that sounds like something I probably would have said. So that's an adaptive story. Moving on to the last one, adaptive balance. This is where the game changes its difficulty curve to make your life harder or easier. Games like Crash Bandicoot did that, the very first one.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 did it masterfully. Mario Kart does it. Crash Bandicoot made obstacles and stuff go slower if it was obvious the player was sucking. Mario Kart's random items are not random as you think. They will throw out stuff that helps you if the AI sees that you're losing terribly.
Yeah.
And then Resident Evil 4 just constantly adjusts its difficulty. So for this one, it observes the current status of the player. What is the player currently doing? Is the player doing really well? Doing really bad? It predicts their chances of success based off of those movements. How many times have they died? Where do they keep dying? Do they keep falling into this hole here? Do they keep failing against that enemy there? Gives me Akko check. Yeah, pretty much.
Thank
Crash.
you. Yeah.
And then from there, it lowers or raises the difficulty to keep the challenge consistent. Now, all 5 of these are not like exclusive. You can have all 5 of these and more. These are just examples of 5 different types of AIs. Anything you want to add before we move on to them?
You know, the player choices that you make in Dragon Age Inquisitions is really also an example of adaptive story.
Yes. Could it be more intelligent? Absolutely.
Oh, yes, it could. Yeah.
Because it's conditional loops, but the story itself and how it unfolds does change. What would make it even more adaptive would be if instead of following just set series of branches, characters responded to you in a way that made it sound like a natural conversation.
That's correct, yeah.
And if more games, these 3 games are great. If you ever get a chance to, AI Dungeon's free. I don't know if Facade is free or not. And the Icebound Concordance, you can, I think, go to the website and play it the same place you can order the book. Get these. These are fun because it feels like you and the program are telling a story together. But if more games do stuff like that, it's going to get just amazing. All right, so anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. So now we're going to give you a 2-part primer on creating your own game AI. This is legitimately just a primer. This is not a tutorial. If you want a tutorial on creating AI, we can recommend some books to you.
Yes.
Because this is the stuff. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Okay. You're going to create your game AI for whether it be a RPG Maker game where it's nothing but conditional loops and common events, or if you're going to code that sucker in C# for Unity. Ask yourself these 3 questions. What aspects of the game need to be intelligently controlled? Because maybe it doesn't need to be everything. Maybe that floating platform doesn't need to be intelligently controlled. Maybe it just needs to move back and forth.
Exactly.
You know, maybe this enemy just hits you with a stick until it dies. So, but don't limit yourself to enemies. The weather could be intelligently.
The weather, yeah.
You know, everyone always wants to throw out dynamic weather systems, and they're great, but wouldn't it be nice? I mean, love to have a AI controlled weather system where the weather gets tougher on you, the snow gets harder if you're progressing too quickly. If you're moving too fast and the game needs to slow you down, it throws storms at you to slog you in the mud. If you need to see something off in the distance, the fog lessens back just enough to show the beautiful tower, and then it comes right back in.
Comes right back in.
Yeah. The environment itself. You know, does the environment need to have sound?
Oh,
does that need to be intelligently controlled so that you're not just having loops of birds playing in the background?
Yeah.
But as you're moving through the forest, you know, the AI says, okay, not enough is happening to the right of the player. Let's get some rustling.
Yeah.
The area over to the left is, is going to be a red herring because the bad guys are coming behind them. Let's have a cracking branch. That's all AI. So that's the first question. What aspects of the game, of your game, need to be intelligently controlled? Ask that. Write that down. Then ask yourself the second question. What about each of those things you just wrote down needs to be intelligently controlled? Okay. Kyoya, good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Kyoya.
Yeah. So what about each AI needs to be intelligently controlled? Actions of the creatures.
Actions of the creatures.
You know, the state of the creature, the state of the weather, the state of the sounds.
Yeah.
You know, the flavor of the world. Is the wind blowing hard? Is the wind blowing a little? Do you hear a flute in the background or not? You know, so that's the second question. What about each of those things need to be intelligently controlled? And then finally, what is the intended outcome? What are you attempting with this system? Are you trying to increase or decrease the challenge, mitigate it? Are you trying to give rewards to the players for their actions? Are you trying to increase their immersion? So you need to ask yourself for each of the aspects, what needs to be intelligently controlled, and up to what is the final outcome. Write those down for everything, and you're going to find that you have a pretty big list, because it's going to move us on to the second part of the primer. Implement the following for every single one of these. Now, how you do it depends on your engine. You're going to use a lot of conditional statements for RPG Maker. You're going to use, you know, C+ scripting for Unity. You're going to use, or I think Godot. Either or C++, one of the two. Blueprints for Unreal.
Yeah.
So develop a list of inputs and corresponding outputs. Okay. What can go in? What can come out? Sound off to the side to distract the player. That's an input. The input is player needs to be distracted. Output is sound. Enemy needs to hit harder. Enemy gets buffed. Inputs, outputs. Prioritize which of your outputs is the most likely to occur. You know, is it more likely that the enemy is going to attack, or is it more likely that the enemy is going to buff? That kind of thing. Account for deviations. So write down, what are the possible deviations, you know, that could happen from one output based on player actions? Well, okay, so the enemy is going to start buffing, but the enemy could then get attacked while the enemy is charging its buff spell. Okay, so we need to account for that. And then analyze the next potential input during the execution. So while whatever your algorithm is outputting, you're already inputting what the next potential output could be. And so you're running algorithm A. While you're running algorithm A, you're figuring out, do you need to run algorithm A again? Or do you need to run algorithm B? That kind of stuff. I was not
back to the heuristic.
Back to the heuristics, right? Because it's got to be the most efficient.
Yeah.
I was not kidding when I said people do this for a living.
Yes, they do.
This can get rough, but it can also be really simple. But even more importantly, it's super rewarding. Because when you have a strong game AI, your game is going to feel so much more. It's going to be cuts above everything else.
So much immersion.
Because the player's going to have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Final parts. We're going to go over 3 examples. So example AI1, and we're going to kind of run you through how the algorithm would work in list format. The turn-based RPG boss minion. So what does the minion do? Our slime buddy is he's volunteering.
He's volunteering.
So our slime minion, the battle round starts. The slime minion AI is going to check the health and state of both the boss and the player. What is the current health of the boss? What does it state? Is it buffed, debuffed, etc.?
Right.
What is the health of the player? Is the player buffed, debuffed, etc.? Then it's going to say, yeah, it's a happy slime, Emma. If the boss has no buff, prepare to buff.
Right.
So our slime buddy is going to buff the boss. He's going to make him stronger.
Yes.
And he's going to start prepping that buff. Yeah, hey, Valborn, welcome to the stream.
All right, Valborn.
So the slime's going to start prepping that buff power. You know, prep. But during the prep, if the boss HP drops below a certain threshold, the slime stops the buff prep. And instead the minion begins to heal.
Right.
However, if the boss is buffed, and if their HP is above a certain amount, then we look at the player, and if the player is buffed, the slime prepares to debuff.
Right.
So the slime is already checked. Boss is buffed. Cool. Check. Boss's HP is above a threshold. Cool. Check. Now look at player. Player has a shield spell.
Yeah.
No bueno. prepare the debuff. And if during that debuff period of prepping that debuff attack, so the magic barrier removal, if the player debuffs, instead the slime attacks.
Yeah. Because, you know, certain player buffs only last for 3 turns, right? 3 rounds.
Or
so.
maybe the slime's other buddy debuffed him in the process.
Exactly.
So since Slime 1 was preparing a debuff, but Slime 2 debuffed the hero, Slime 1 go, ah, and then attacks. And then, of course, I don't have it listed, but if the boss is buffed, the boss is healthy, and the player is debuffed, the slime will just attack.
Right, just attack.
But when targeting, it'll target the player that is either causing the most damage or the most negative status to the boss. That's its aggro.
Right.
And it'll run on that loop infinitely until it's beaten.
Aww.
So that's the first one. Anything you want to add, Teal?
No, it's good. It's good.
Next one. The enemy grenadier.
Aha.
We need to talk to him about his smoking habit. So, this algorithm would run like, for example, the player's approach to where the grenadier is, which I'm assuming the grenadier will be part of a fire team. We can assume that.
Let's just assume that. It
signals the fight starts. So the enemy grenadier slime is chilling, smoking his cigar, and in comes the player. Uh-oh, put out cigar, get grenade launcher ready. So at that point, the algorithm then searches for the best cover and moves to it.
Yes.
And achieves cover because the firefight is starting. Then the algorithm will analyze the distance to the player and the type of cover the player has, if any. Is the player under a full cover, a partial cover like a small fence, a wall? Is the player out in the open?
Oh, yeah.
If the cover allows for grenade attacks, then prepare to use a grenade. Get ready to use that grenade attack. Load it up, get ready, aim. But in the time that it's aiming, if the player moves into the open completely, switch to your rifle and shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
Try to go for that headshot.
Right.
If the player remains hidden in a place that can be grenaded, the grenadier will then shoot off the grenade.
Right.
Because that's what a grenadier did. If the player fires upon the location of the enemy grenadier, remain in cover until the fire stops. So duck down and wait. The shooting will stop eventually. And once the shooting stops, move to another location. This is rote enough that if the player was really good and had 5 shots on their weapon, they'd shoot off 4, pause, and as soon as the grenadier started moving, get that headshot.
Right.
Which is good. The player needs to be able to be rewarded. Excuse me. You good here?
I'm good.
And then the last one, the tactical hunter.
Ha.
Okay, so here we have our sneaky hunter assassin type.
Yes.
Like Hitman. So this AI, first thing they're going to do is they're going to observe a bunch of variables. They're going to look at things like the player's footsteps and are they making sounds or is the player moving silent? You know, so is player movement making noise? If so, what direction? It's also going to look for moving shadows.
Yeah.
Rustling branches. That kind of thing. And other NPCs, maybe other guards on its side, or other NPCs that might be allies to the player. It doesn't matter. Right. But it's going to analyze this. Now, if something goes off, so let's say, for example, the footfalls make a sound. Or let's say that the branches over there rustle beyond a certain tolerance. Yes. Or an ally to the hunter, to our hunter enemy, is found dead. Or bloodstain. Then it goes into hunting mode. As soon as it goes into hunting mode, the algorithm will have the enemy eye move into cover and remain in motion, because a moving target's harder to get, while tracking those sounds, those shadows, the rustling branches, and moving around trying to locate the player. So if it comes across certain tells, these could be tells like, blood on the grass, spent ammo casings, if such a thing exists, dead NPCs, dead NPCs, then adjust the directional approach. And this is why in good games like your Metal Gear Solid, you could technically fool a base by killing someone and moving the dead body to another place.
Oh, yeah.
Because this kind of tell could confuse an AI like the tactical hunter. When the player is found, though, move in and prepare for an optimal attack, whether it be a sneak attack, a stab, a headshot, a grab and wrestle, starting CQC, it doesn't matter. During the prep, though, while you're getting ready for the sneak attack, if the player detects the enemy AI, just go into a full attack mode. Drop the pretense and start going. And if it's not detected, it's like some kind of stealth kill.
Yeah.
So as you can see, each one of these adapts its strategies based on what the player's doing and other factors around, like the environment, etc., etc. And that is the end of the presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions and anything Teal may want to talk about, because again, this is a primer, but we have talked multiple times during our critical plays about how important AI is.
Yeah.
And I want to stress, before I turn it over to you guys and Teal, it does not matter what engine you're using.
No, it doesn't.
Even if you're using RPG Maker. Even if you're using Game Maker Studio. And I'm saying that those are not bad engines. Those are great engines. Regardless of the engine you are using. Learn how to construct a solid AI. And your player experience will be light years above others.
And we mean that too. There is nothing that can contribute to total immersion and really positive player experience than well-constructed AIs. Just for example, think about crickets are chirping at night, and then all of a sudden they stop chirping.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an AI that does that. You know, most... I don't want to say show of hands because we're all virtual right here, but I would not be surprised if any one of you who are watching this live or watching this on VOD thought AIs were just your enemies.
Yeah.
They're not. They're so much more. Alien Isolation and Left 4 Dead. Yeah, Left 4 Dead uses AI specifically for sound. Isolation uses something called a menace gauge, meaning that if the xenomorph is putting too much pressure on the player and it's getting to the point where the player has no chance of winning, the AI will actually pull the xenomorph back and put him to a different part of the ship.
Yeah.
So AIs are a lot more than just enemy controls. Teal gave a great example. An AI would determine stop the crickets, because that would be so terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes, you could have it be that while you're in your horror game that you've designed, the player's moving through the forest, and when they hit a certain tile or a certain zone, suddenly the music stops.
Yeah.
While that's fine, wouldn't it be so much better if an AI stopped the crickets 3 seconds before the monster attacked?
Yeah.
Regardless of where the player was on the map.
See, that is a good use of your AI. Really enhances the player experience.
So, any questions?
Yeah.
Any questions, any comments, anything that you would like us to address on this? This is a big one.
There's entire college courses devoted to AI. There's online courses devoted to it. So it is not a easy topic.
No.
It is one that you can really dive into and deep dive and see how far that rabbit hole goes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a fascinating concept anyway. If you go beyond that and you start looking at the kind of, and again, this is nothing like the AIs that Google and Facebook use, but the concept of a program that adapts.
Yeah.
Through algorithms, etc., to input is a fascinating thing. And Valborn said it best. I used to simply think AIs are RNG. They're not.
No, and they're not.
No. I'm going to say this very carefully because I don't want to insult anyone out there. But you're doing yourself and your game a disservice if you use a random generator to determine an action.
Yeah.
You really are. You can have variances
Sure.
like plus or minus 10%, stuff like that. But that's different than I'm going to have a list of things that can happen and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to throw a random number and that thing will happen. You are doing yourself and your game a major disservice.
Yeah. There needs to be an element of realism in your game. And to some extent, some predictability. So that your player can confidently traverse your game's path.
Even your unpredictable parts need to be predictable. In other words, what that means is, even if the game throws you a curveball, the player at some point should have gone, I can learn from that, and I might be able to counter it next time.
Exactly.
It may take them a dozen times, but eventually they can. The Last of Us is a great example. Every single enemy in The Last of Us, human or the infected, you can figure out how to get around them. You can figure out how they move. You can figure out how to defeat them with minimal resources, with time, even though they may act like real people or real creatures. It just takes time. And so what Teal is saying is correct. You know, there has to be an element of somewhat, and random number generators remove that predictability completely.
They do.
Any other questions? This was not a long one.
Comments?
Yeah. This one was not.
Well, the thing is, we kept it short because if we had any longer, we'd start really diving into it. And this is not a how-to course.
No.
This is not a design your own AI workshop. This was just a broad overview of game AI.
Right. We've in a number of the games that we played, we've talked about, hey, the AI needs to be this, the AI needs to be that. And at some point, we actually threw it out to the supporters. The supporters voted for, like, yeah, let's show them what it entails.
Yeah.
Because we feel in this case, once you learn the theory, you can figure out the application based off of the engineering.
Because you understand what it is you need to pull out. So.
And you're welcome, Emma. We love having you guys. We loved doing this one. We are nearing the end of the year.
Yes.
We are going to have 2 more. The next one is the only one left on the list, which will be 3D level design.
3D level design.
And then we have a special one for you at the end of the year.
Yes.
But we're going to surprise you guys with this.
It's like a Christmas present.
It's a Christmas present. It's a Christmas present. We will give one more. We will give it, let's see. So it is 58 minutes. We will give to the hour mark. If they have any last minute questions about game AI. And then we'll go ahead and call it for the evening. We, of course, will be back on Wednesday.
Yes.
When we'll continue our critical play of Dragon Quest XI.
Dragon Quest XI.
There will be no Trails of Cold Steel this week.
Yeah.
Because this Thursday is
our wedding anniversary.
Yeah. We've been together for a number of years now, and we're going to celebrate together.
So we're taking the night off.
We're taking the night off. And then Friday will be our AMA.
Friday's the AMA, where we sit back and enjoy a cold beverage of choice.
Haha. So let's see. Emma says, I've just started looking at Unreal Engine. Good engine.
It is a very good engine.
You're at the beginning of a wonderful journey. Try not to get overwhelmed, because it's a lot. But
yeah, it is. And it is easy to feel overwhelmed, but just take one little section at a time.
Yeah.
And don't move on until you thoroughly understand and master that one section.
Oh, wow. Thank you for the sub.
We got a sub.
Oh, thank you.
Happy advanced wedding anniversary, Steel and Teal.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, Emma, as Teal was saying, take it one step at a time. Master, well, not master, but understand, and then move on.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I think you're going to learn, and Teal back me up on this, is, well, first the user interface if you're new to 3D, but it's the way landscaping works.
Yes.
That one took a while for us to wrap our head around, And then, of course, diving into blueprints, just when you're ready,
Yeah.
put on your diving goggles and go, because blueprints are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, some things took me a while to get, like elevation,
Yeah.
scale.
Yes, scale.
Yeah. Some of the easiest I picked up was textures and patterns.
Yes. Yeah, the materials.
Yeah, all the materials.
Yes. So once you get that, Emma, you know, show us what you got. You're on our Discord, I believe. Show us. Show. We'd love to see. We love to see people working in any engine and seeing what they come up with. And thank you so much for the happy wedding anniversary. Valborn says, I'm not a game designer or programmer, but I really enjoy the lessons. It helped me to learn to analyze any game I'm playing. That means us so much.
Thank you.
That touches our hearts, Valborn. We do this to teach.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys pull away something useful.
Okay. So.
And you're very welcome, Emma. All right, so I think now is probably the best time to call for the evening.
Yeah.
I really, really do. We love you, Hawk.
Thank you, Hawk. Yes, thank you.
Super awesome, dude. Hope you feel better, and we'll catch you soon. And to everyone out there, we want to thank you again for being part of a wonderful creator classroom. We love you guys to death. Just remember, no problem is so difficult that you can't deconstruct it bit by bit and solve it.
Yes. And we have a whole community to help.
Absolutely. So, you know, join us on our Discord. See you for our critical plays. Be here for Friday because we got the booze and the conversation.
That's right.
And if you like what you saw, lay the smack down the like button below. Subscribe to our channel. Consider supporting us on Patreon. Connect us with Facebook, Twitter, Discord. And we will see you in the next video.
See you next time.